Hey there everybody, welcome to another episode of Bert's Bike, and today we are going to do a long-term review on my BMW R18. Now I've had the pleasure of owning this bike for a little over a year and I put a few thousand miles on it at this point. If it's a bike you've been looking at or considering, you should watch this review in its entirety before you pull the trigger. So buckle up, grab a drink and your favorite snack. This may be the most complete R18 review yet. Let's get into it. I had my eye on the R18 for quite some time, and after the initial test ride, I was hooked. And if I'm being 100% honest, I didn't really understand what this motorcycle was about. But after I left the dealership and some time had passed, I found myself often thinking about the bike, so I knew at some point I had to get my hands on this motorcycle. Fast forward about a year later, I walked into my dealership and they made me an incredible offer on this R18, and quite frankly, it was too good of a deal to pass up. If I were gonna own a BMW, now would be the time. So I ponied up and bought this amazing cruiser. In this review, I'm gonna cover what I love about the machine, some things I hate about it, and what it's like to own this R18 long term. And as a bonus, some general things you should know if you've never owned a BMW motorcycle. So let's get the obvious out of the way. Yes, it is a handsome machine. The R18, in my opinion, might be the best looking, most muscular cruiser out there. It looks just that good. The design and the aesthetics of the bike are nothing short of amazing. From the analog minimalist speedometer, the huge boxer engine, the unique headlight design, and also the tank shape. I even love the fishtail exhaust. Yes, I know that's a little controversial. You're either in the love it or hate it camp, but I am definitely in the love it camp. And I gotta say, the lines of this bike are exactly what they should be. When you're looking at the bike from any angle, it just looks so right. You can tell the engineers and designers really spent the time to get the aesthetics just right. I really love what BMW has done here. They've gone back to their old R bikes, pulled a lot of styling cues, and fused it with this sort of Art Deco styling. And what you get at the end of the day is a truly unique cruiser, and there really isn't anything like it on the road. The R18 comes in many different colors, but my personal favorites are the white, black, and gold model, and also my R18's color, Manhattan Matte Green. And in my opinion, these two colors really work well with the styling of this motorcycle. The white, black, and gold for a classier look, and this matte green just really helps relay how bad to the bone this motorcycle really is. So yes, A+++ on the aesthetics. So how does the bike feel when you sit on it? Well, my thoughts on the bike haven't changed since the day I rode it off the showroom floor. At 761 pounds, you feel the weight. It's heavy, but heavy in the sense that you feel the quality and the rigidity of the components, much like earlier Harley Davidsons. But with the R18, there's this layer of refinement and finesse that goes along with it. The components and the build quality are absolutely top-notch. It's long, wide, and low, and in my opinion, this is how a cruiser should be. Being 6'1", the cockpit is spacious. There's plenty of room to move around and get comfortable. If you're much shorter though, you may want to play around with a seat that pushes you forward or rotate the handlebars to bring them closer. Speaking of which, the handlebars are so comfortable. The bend and rearward sweep puts them exactly where they need to be. They are just perfect for this motorcycle. One of the most common questions I get asked about the R18 is, do the cylinder heads get in the way of your braking and shifting? And at first, yes, but after riding it for a few days, you really get used to them being there. However, I wouldn't recommend wearing wedge or mock toe boots. A lot of people end up modifying the R18 for floorboards, and when they do that, they usually go with the heel-toe shifter. Now, I really like pegs on a motorcycle, and I love the way they feel on the R18, so that's the way that I like to roll with this motorcycle. Let's move on to how the bike feels when you're riding it. Its one party trick is the fact that the engine throws you to the left rather violently on startup, almost like a sleeping beast waking up from a bad dream. and I love it. It reminds you that you're about to ride this 1800cc German fighter plane. And after startup and the bike settles down, it idles right around 900 to 1000 RPMs. And every once in a while, you feel some mild kicks to the left. It's just the bike's way of letting you know it's still there. No doubt about it, it's one of the most characterful engines out there. Back to the exhaust. Although they look the business, they're a little too quiet for me and quite frankly, most people. I typically like a quiet exhaust, but even for me, this is not loud enough. I wish it was about 25% louder. So why not just take the baffles out? Well, the way the exhaust is designed, it's not that simple. You really have to do some major surgery to get all the packing out of them. Yes, there are some companies out there that do that sort of thing. However, I'm hoping that BMW or another company makes a replica that just fits right on there. Getting back to the ride, the shift points are very predictable and exactly where you'd want them. The bike cruises down back roads like no other, giving you a sense of presence and refined confidence. Sure, it excels in cruising, but the bike has no problem hustling around. It turns in the corners and holds the line quite well. Although you can ride this bike any way you want to, it really excels on the open road. It has no problem holding 80-90 miles per hour on the highway. And here's where the solidity and weight really come in clutch. At high speeds, it feels very planted and sure-footed, tracking straight as an arrow. Let's move on to the tech package. Personally, I got into riding motorcycles to experience the outdoors and get my head out of my phone and my iPad, so for me, the simpler, the better. ABS is standard, and it does come with 3 rider modes: rain, rock, and roll. Now when I got this bike, I kept it mainly in roll, which gives you a nice relaxed cruising feel, but after getting to know the bike, I tend to prefer rock mode for most things. I still go back to roll from time to time, but most of my days are spent in rock mode. There is a digital tachometer, an analog speedometer, and well, the time and date. Also, there is no fuel gauge. I know a lot of riders get bent out of shape about this, but I don't know why it's a big deal. I just reset my trip meter at every fill up. Amenities-wise, in 2023, cruise control and heated grips came stock. I don't normally seek out heated grips and cruise control on a motorcycle, but on a modern-day cruiser, they are a welcome addition and in my opinion should come stock with every big cruiser. The cruise control works as expected and the heated grips get really hot. However, if you're wearing really thick winter gloves, most of the heat that you feel will be on your palms, and your fingers do still get really cold. If you intend on riding in freezing cold temperatures, you may still need some heated gloves. Like I said, I don't normally care about these extra features, but for a bike of this pedigree and being a premium brand, you just come to expect it. So if this bike is so great, then what are the downsides? Well, it being a cruiser, it is not fun in traffic. So much so that I avoid going into the city when I ride this bike. The bike being big, long, heavy, and low naturally make it less of a city bomber and lane splitter. One thing people always forget with cruisers is when you're in traffic, you sit so low that you're underneath the line of sight of most taller vehicles' rear and side view. Also, everybody knows when you have a low bike, you have limited suspension travel. So if you live in an area where the roads are chewed up and unmaintained, this is probably not the bike for that. Is any of this the fault of the bike? No, it's just what comes along with cruisers in general. The next thing I'm not so jazzed about is the throttle mapping. When coming from a stop, you tend to have to give the bike a little bit more throttle than you would think. So at this stop sign here, when I first got the bike in my first video, I actually killed the bike going around that corner here. It's not as snappy and responsive as I think it should be, but once you're moving, I think the throttle responds really well. If you're the type of rider that really wants to get up and going as fast as possible, you'll probably want to leave the bike in rock mode. For an in-depth view of how the bike really feels in all 3 throttle modes, please check out the ride modes video I made on this. I'll put a link in the description below. If you've made it this far, you're probably thinking, if that's all that could go wrong with the bike, it seems like a pretty great motorcycle, and you would be right. But I did have something go wrong with the R18 when I was a few hundred miles away from home, on a Sunday no less. And to rub even more salt in the wound, I was right next to a Harley dealership when this all went down, and they're open on Sundays. If you want to check that out, I'll leave another link to that video in the description as well. But to make a long story really short, I was losing final drive gear oil on my way home from Cleveland, Ohio, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I was somewhere in between. We had friends with us who trailered their bikes up, so I did make it back home, but if I was by myself, I would have had to get the bike towed to the nearest dealership and stay a couple nights somewhere until a shop opened on Tuesday. This is a major reason why Harley-Davidson is such a popular motorcycle brand here in the United States. Most Harley dealerships are open 7 days a week, and dealerships are plentiful. Where I live, I only know of one BMW dealership. Harley-Davidson has about 3 in my immediate area, and about another 3 an hour away. Personally, that took a lot of wind out of my sails, but I got it taken care of under warranty and haven't had a problem since. All in all, I still think the R18 is a great bike, but there are a few things you should know about owning the R18 and BMWs in general. To start off, for a cruiser, there is quite a lot to keep track of maintenance-wise compared to, let's say, an Indian motorcycle. My Indian Chief had 1 type of oil for the whole bike. The R18 has 3. Final drive, transmission, and engine oil. Service intervals are about every 6,000 miles. Service has a valve check with a final drive oil every 12,000 miles, and transmission oil leapfrogging in with that. Contrasting this with Harley-Davidson, Harleys also have 3 types of oil, however, they don't have valve checks at all. With all that said, schedule maintenance is easy enough if you want to do it yourself. It being a boxer twin, the valves are very easy to get to, but if you don't have the right tools or aren't mechanically savvy, it's better just to take it to a shop and give it to somebody who knows exactly what they're doing. Which leads me into my next point. Paying for services at BMW could get rather costly. My first service was a little over $400 for the break-in, and that was about the median price. And of course, I did an entire video on the breakdown of that. Link in the description. Some owners are reporting subsequent services with valve checks to about $600 and $700 and up. If you don't think that's a ton of money, my Jeep Gladiator's oil change service is around $80 with a tire rotation, and usually the first 2 to 3 services are free. Also, if you contrast my Kawasaki Z900RS and my Yamaha Tenere 700, the total cost of annual maintenance on both bikes was under $200 doing it myself. And you don't even touch valve clearances until about $15K and up. Now you might be telling yourself, well, if I took my Z900 or my Tenere in to get a regular oil change, it would still cost about $300 to get that oil change done on average. Well, that's true, but the difference is with the BMW, specialized tools and fluids to get the job done, and with the Tenere and the Z900, you basically can get it done with a set of just metric tools that you can get anywhere. If you don't ride very much throughout the year and you're just a seasonal rider and you're only putting a couple of thousand miles on the bike every year, you still have the annual maintenance. And so you're still looking at about $400 to $600 or more just annually on this bike. At the time I bought my bike, BMW was including a 3-year warranty. So for me, as much as I like doing my own service, I didn't want to give BMW any reason to not honor a potential warranty claim. So for me, I'd probably be at the mercy at the dealer. If you're buying it new, it may be beneficial to see what maintenance packages are offered if you plan on keeping this bike for a long time. Let's talk about gas mileage on the R18. It does require premium fuel. However, you are probably going to get anywhere between the mid 40s to low 50s if you are riding the bike normally. And in my opinion, that is really good considering the weight of the motorcycle. Since we're really on maintenance right now, a couple of small little notes on this bike is it's not easy to jack up. BMW has a proprietary jack just for the R18. You can get around it by jacking it up by the exhaust mounting brackets and some creative use of 2x4s. You can get the bike jacked up just fine. However, if you're out on the road and you have a flat, getting the bike jacked up in the middle of nowhere is going to be quite a task, especially if you ended up getting the spoked wheels. As classic and cool as spokes are, I would really suggest getting mag wheels when you buy your R18. That way you can plug a puncture with a simple tire plug kit. So let's rewind a little bit and talk about my final drive issue. After getting the bike back, I talked to the mechanic and asked him how hard of a job it was getting that final drive off, especially because they had to order a specialized tool from BMW. It was a really big job. Looking at my paperwork after getting the bike back, it seems that if I would have to come out of pocket, I would roughly have had to pay about $1,500 just for this repair. So you can kind of see a common theme here. If you're thinking about getting an R18 and concerned about resale, you'd be correct to be concerned. If you priced out my particular bike, MSRP would be towards $17,000. Since it's such a niche bike, you can find them from time to time at a deep discount at dealerships for the low teens and many times right or below used value. With all that said, even at full retail price, you are getting a whole lot of motorcycle, especially when you compare it to similar offerings from Indian and HD. The R18 is probably the best cruiser I've ridden. It's quite an experience if you've never ridden one. BMW has managed to blend everything I love about the rigidity of Harley-Davidson with the classic style and panache of yesteryear's R-Series motorcycles. If you can, you owe it to yourself to take one out on a test ride. If you want a cruiser and you're looking for something unique with gobs of character, this is the cruiser to get. Nothing will even come close, even at full MSRP, but with some of the deals and used prices being down, you can get a whole lot of bike for not a lot of coin. Alright everybody, that's about it. Check out some of the links in the description. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. It's Bert's Bike, and I'll catch you on the next one.